Rain tapped against tall windows. Inside the grand hall, candles flickered on cold stone walls. Elena stood near the fireplace. Her left leg was weak from an old fall. She leaned on her walking stick, trying to stay steady. Her mother's voice cut through the air like ice. "Look at her, Charles. She limps like a broken bird." Elena's chest tightened. She kept her eyes down. Her two sisters laughed behind silk fans. "Who would want damaged goods?" whispered Margaret, the eldest. "Hush," said their father, but his voice held no warmth, no defense for his third daughter. Elena touched the papers hidden in her dress pocket, maps she had drawn in secret, trade routes she had studied for months, plans that could help their lands prosper. But none of them cared what she knew. They only saw her limp. They only saw shame. "We've made our choice," her mother announced. "Lord Adrian of Westmore has agreed to the match." Elena's heart dropped. "But mother, you will marry him next month, and you will live far from here." Her mother's words were final, sharp as winter frost. Margaret smirked. "Poor Adrian, he doesn't know what burden he's getting." "At least she'll be gone," added Rose, the middle sister. "No more embarrassment at court events." Elena felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she would not cry, not here, not in front of them. She thought of her secret room upstairs, her books, her maps, her dreams of seeing the world beyond these cruel walls. "You leave in 2 weeks," her father said without looking at her. "Pack light, take only what you need." Elena nodded slowly. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Yes, father." As her family continued their cold planning, Elena made a silent promise. One day they would see her worth. One day they would know they were wrong. She limped toward the stairs, each step heavy with hurt, but deep in her heart, a small flame of hope still flickered. Maybe Lord Adrian would be different. Maybe he would see her as more than a broken bird. Miles away, in the quiet lands of Westmore, Lord Adrian sat by his study window. Autumn leaves fell like golden rain outside. His castle was smaller than Elena's family home, but it felt warm, alive. "My lord," said Thomas, his trusted friend and advisor, "are you certain about this match?" Adrian looked up from his papers. His dark eyes were calm but tired. "Tell me what you've heard, Thomas." "They say she walks with difficulty, an old injury." Thomas spoke gently. He knew his lord's heart. Adrian nodded. "What else?" "Some call her damaged goods. Her family seems eager to be rid of her." A shadow crossed Adrian's face. He knew that feeling. Being unwanted, being cast aside. During the war, he had lost his younger brother Marcus. The guilt still lived in his chest. He had failed to protect the person he loved most. "And her dowry?" Thomas asked. "Small, but I don't need gold, Thomas. This land provides enough." Adrian stood and walked to the window. "What I need, what I hope for, is peace. A partner who understands that life has sharp edges." Thomas smiled. He had served Adrian for 10 years. He knew his lord was not like other nobles. Adrian cared for his people. He shared his food with hungry families. He worked beside his men in the fields. "The common folk will welcome her," Thomas said. "They trust your judgment." Adrian picked up the letter from Elena's father. Cold words about suitable arrangements and quick ceremonies. No mention of Elena's thoughts, her feelings, her dreams. This troubled him. "Prepare the guest chambers," Adrian said quietly. "Make them warm, comfortable. She's probably frightened enough already." That night, Adrian walked through his halls. Servants bowed with genuine smiles. Children ran to hug his legs. Old women called him dear boy and offered him fresh bread. This was the life he wanted to share. Simple, kind, real. He thought about Elena. What pain had she carried? What dreams did she hide? He had agreed to this marriage not for duty or gold, but because something in her father's letter made him sad. The way they wrote about her, like she was a burden, a problem to solve. Adrian knew that feeling too well. Maybe they could heal together. Two wounded souls finding peace in each other's company. He looked up at the stars through an open window. "Please," he whispered to the night sky, "let this bring us both some happiness." The day Elena arrived, rain fell in heavy sheets. Her carriage stopped before Adrian's gates. She peered through the small window, heart pounding like a trapped bird. His castle was not grand like her family home, but it looked welcoming. Warm light glowed in many windows. Smoke rose cheerfully from chimneys. Elena pulled her dark cloak tighter. She had practiced this moment for 2 weeks. How to bow without falling. How to speak without stammering. How to hide her fear. The carriage door opened. Rain immediately soaked her shoes. And there he stood. Lord Adrian was tall. Yes. Dark hair, yes. But his eyes were not cruel. They were gentle, almost kind. Elena tried to bow properly. Her walking stick slipped on the wet stones. She stumbled forward, but Adrian stepped quickly forward. He caught her arm with gentle hands. "Careful," he said softly. "These stones are treacherous in the rain." Elena's face burned red with shame. "I'm sorry, my lord. I'm clumsy. You're cold and wet," he interrupted gently. "Come, let's get you inside where it's warm." He offered his arm, not demanding, just offering. Elena hesitated. Was this a trap? Would he mock her limp once they were alone? But rain dripped from her hair. Her dress was soaking through. She had no choice. She took his arm. He walked slowly, matching her pace, never rushing, never pulling. Inside, the hall glowed with firelight. Servants smiled and bowed. A kind-faced woman hurried forward with warm blankets. "This is Martha," Adrian said. "She manages the household. She'll help you settle in." Martha had gentle eyes and grey hair. She looked at Elena with was that warmth? "Poor dear, you're soaked through. Come, let's get you dry and fed." Elena nodded, still confused. Where was the mockery, the cruel laughter? That first evening, they dined in a small chamber, just the two of them. The fire crackled. The food was simple but delicious. Elena waited for him to speak, to criticize, to complain about getting damaged goods for a wife. Instead, Adrian asked, "How was your journey? Not too tiring, I hope?" His voice was calm, interested, like he actually cared about her answer. "It was long, my lord," she managed. "Please call me Adrian. We needn't be so formal." He smiled, actually smiled. "Are your chambers comfortable? If you need anything changed." Elena blinked. No one had ever asked her preferences before. As days passed, the confusion grew. Adrian never stared at her limp, never sighed with disappointment, never compared her to other ladies. When she dropped a cup at breakfast, she flinched, waiting for anger. Instead, Adrian just said, "These things happen. Would you like some more tea?" Slowly, very slowly. Elena began to breathe again. 3 weeks into her new life, Elena woke to birdsong instead of harsh voices. She dressed carefully and made her way downstairs. Her walking stick tapped softly on stone floors, but here no one winced at the sound. In the great hall, she found Adrian reading reports. Maps spread across the table. Numbers and notes covered the papers. "Good morning," he said, looking up with a smile. "Did you sleep well?" Elena nodded. Then curiosity won over fear. "Are those trade reports?" Adrian's eyebrows rose with interest. "Yes, the harvest numbers from our northern farms. Would you like to see?" No one had ever asked her opinion on such matters before. Elena moved closer, careful not to trip. She studied the papers with sharp eyes. "Your northern route, it goes through Miller's Pass." "Yes. Why?" "That path floods every spring. The merchants lose time and goods. Elena touched the map gently. There's another way, through Sage Valley. It adds 2 days, but it's safer, more reliable. Adrian stared at her, not with mockery, with amazement. How do you know this? Elena's cheeks warmed. I study maps. In my spare time, I know it's not proper for a lady, but... It's brilliant, Adrian interrupted. Show me this route. For the next hour, Elena explained trade patterns she had memorized, seasonal changes that affected travel, better paths that most nobles never considered. Adrian listened to every word, asked thoughtful questions, took notes. You have a gift for this, he said finally, a real talent. Elena's heart fluttered. A gift? Her. That afternoon, Adrian introduced her to his steward, William. Elena has some excellent ideas about our trade routes. I'd like you to hear them. William listened respectfully as Elena shared her knowledge. He nodded and smiled. Brilliant, my lady. Truly brilliant. As days turned to weeks, Elena found herself taking on more tasks. She helped plan supply deliveries. She suggested improvements to storage methods. She even helped settle disputes between merchants. And people began to listen to her. Lady Elena, the baker's wife, would say, "Could you look at these grain orders? You have such a good eye for numbers." Children no longer stared at her limp. Instead, they brought her their small problems, lost toys, hurt feelings. Elena found she was good at solving both. Slowly, her voice grew stronger. Her steps became more confident. She still limped, yes, but she no longer tried to hide behind walls and shadows. One evening, as she worked by candlelight, Adrian found her. "You're up late," he observed. "I'm sorry, I can work somewhere else if—" "No, please, stay." He sat across from her. "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me." "Our trade income has increased by 20% since you arrived. The merchants speak highly of your fairness. The children adore you." His eyes were warm in the candlelight. "You've brought life to this place." Elena's throat tightened with emotion. I've never been useful before." "Then they were fools not to see your worth." That night, Elena fell asleep with a smile on her face. For the first time in years, she felt valuable. Winter melted into spring, and Elena bloomed like the flowers in Adrian's garden. She no longer flinched when people approached. Her voice rang clear in the great hall when she discussed business matters. Her maps now covered an entire wall of the study. "My lady," said Sarah, the miller's daughter, "my grandmother is sick. Could you help?" Elena had been learning herb lore from Martha. Her gentle hands and patient nature made her a natural healer. In the miller's cottage, she examined the old woman carefully. "It's a lung fever, but not severe. Willow bark tea 3 times daily, and this poultice for her chest." The grandmother recovered within days. Word spread quickly. Soon, people came from neighboring villages seeking Elena's help. A farmer's broken leg, a merchant's infected wound, a child's persistent cough. Elena's healing skills grew stronger with each success, but more than that, her confidence bloomed. "You have magic hands," Martha told her one afternoon, "and a heart that truly cares. That's the real medicine." Elena also discovered she had a talent for organization. She redesigned the castle's record-keeping system. She created efficient schedules for the servants. She even established a small school for the village children. "Numbers and letters," she told a group of eager young faces. "These are tools that can change your lives. Never let anyone tell you they're too difficult to learn." Adrian often watched from doorways as Elena taught. His eyes held something that made her heart flutter. Was it admiration? Respect? One evening, they walked through the garden together. Spring air carried the scent of apple blossoms. "Do you ever miss your family?" Adrian asked gently. Elena considered this. "I miss the idea of them, the family I wished they could be." She touched a rose with her fingertip. "But I don't miss the pain, the constant feeling that I wasn't good enough. You're more than good enough, Elena. You're... She looked at him in surprise. I'm just me, a woman who limps and reads too many maps. Adrian stopped walking. He turned to face her fully. You're a woman who heals the sick, who teaches children to read, who increased our prosperity through pure intelligence, who brings kindness wherever she goes. Elena's breath caught. Adrian, I need you to know something. His voice was serious, honest. This marriage began as an arrangement, but somewhere along the way, it became so much more. Elena's heart pounded. What are you saying? I'm saying that He paused, seeming to search for the right words. I'm saying that I care for you, deeply, not as a duty or obligation, but as the woman who makes every day brighter. Tears filled Elena's eyes, but for the first time in years, they were tears of joy. I care for you too, she whispered, more than I ever thought possible. That night, Elena looked at herself in her chamber mirror. The same face looked back. The same limp would be there tomorrow, but everything else had changed. She was no longer the broken bird her family had cast aside. She was Elena of Westmore, healer, teacher, advisor, beloved. She was finally, truly, home. Summer brought long golden days to Westmore. Elena and Adrian fell into comfortable rhythms together. Morning brought shared breakfast by the garden window. They discussed the day's plans over fresh bread and honey. Adrian valued her opinions on everything from crop rotation to diplomatic matters. The merchants from Eastport want to renegotiate their contracts, Adrian mentioned one morning. Elena set down her teacup thoughtfully. They're probably struggling with the new port taxes. What if we offered longer payment terms in exchange for exclusive rights to their finest wool? Adrian smiled. Brilliant as always. Will you handle the negotiations? Elena's heart swelled. 6 months ago, she had been considered unfit for any important task. Now Adrian trusted her with major business decisions. Their evenings were Elena's favorite time. They would sit by the fire, sometimes reading, sometimes talking quietly about their days. One night, Adrian shared stories about his brother Marcus. He was younger but braver than me, always jumping into rivers to save drowning kittens, always standing up for smaller boys. Elena listened with a gentle heart. Tell me about the day you lost him. Adrian's voice grew soft. Battle of Thornfield. I was supposed to watch his back, but I got separated in the fighting. He stared into the flames. When I found him, it was too late. Allah reached over and took his hand. It wasn't your fault, Adrian. Wasn't it? I promised our mother I'd keep him safe. War makes promises impossible to keep. Marcus chose to fight. He chose to be brave. That's not your burden to carry. Adrian squeezed her hand gratefully. How do you always know the right words? Because I know what it feels like to carry blame that isn't yours, Elena said quietly. For years, I believed my family's words, that I was damaged, worthless, a burden. And now? Elena smiled. Now I know better. My worth isn't determined by their cruelty or by this limp. It's determined by how I choose to live, how I choose to love. Adrian lifted her hand and kissed it gently. I love how you choose to live, Elena. I love your brilliant mind and your caring heart. I love your strength and your gentleness. Elena's breath caught. Adrian, I love you, he said simply, not as my arranged wife, but as the woman who saved me from a life of loneliness and regret. Tears sparkled in Elena's eyes. I love you too, with everything I am. They moved closer together on the settee. Adrian cupped Elena's face gently in his hands. May I kiss you? He asked softly. Elena nodded, her heart racing. Their first kiss was tender, sweet, full of all the words they hadn't yet spoken, all the promises they wanted to make. When they separated, Elena felt like she was glowing from within. I never thought I could be this happy, she whispered. Neither did I, Adrian replied, resting his forehead against hers. But here we are. Outside their window, stars sparkled like scattered diamonds. Inside, two hearts that had been broken were finally beautifully whole. On a crisp autumn morning, a royal messenger arrived at Westmore's gates. Elena was in the garden gathering herbs for her healing work. She heard the commotion and hurried to the courtyard, her walking stick tapping urgently on the stones. The messenger bore the seal of King Robert himself. Adrian read the official document with growing amazement. "What does it say?" Elena asked, her heart beginning to race. Adrian looked at her with wide eyes. "Elena, who exactly are you? What do you mean?" "This letter, it's about Princess Elena Marguerite, daughter of the late Queen Isabella. She disappeared as a child after a terrible accident." Eleanor's world tilted. That's impossible. But memories began flooding back. Memories she had buried deep. A beautiful woman with kind eyes singing lullabies. A golden crown catching sunlight. A terrible fall down marble stairs. "The accident," she whispered. "I was running through the palace. I fell my leg." Adrian read further. "It says here that after the accident, a grieving nobleman took the injured princess away, claimed he could provide better care away from court politics." Elena sank onto a garden bench, her mind reeling. "My father, the man I called father, he isn't—" "According to this, your real father was King Robert's younger brother. When he died in battle, certain nobles wanted to prevent your claim to the throne. The accident provided the perfect opportunity to hide you away." Elena's hands shook. "All these years they knew who I really was, and they still treated me like an embarrassment," Adrian finished gently, "because a limping princess threatened their political plans." The messenger cleared his throat. "Your Highness, the king requests your immediate return to court. There are matters of succession that require your attention." Elena looked up at Adrian with frightened eyes. "What does this mean for us?" Before Adrian could answer, another commotion arose at the gates. Elena's heart sank as she recognized the approaching carriage. Her adoptive family had come to Westmore. Her mother stepped out first, dressed in fine silks, but wearing a cold expression. Margaret and Rose followed, their faces twisted with barely concealed anger. "So," her mother said sharply, "the crippled girl thinks she's royalty now?" Elena stood slowly, leaning on her walking stick, but for the first time she didn't cower under their cruel gaze. "Mother," she said quietly, "or should I say, Lady Catherine, since you're not actually my mother at all." Margaret stepped forward with a sneer. "Royal blood or not, you're still the same limping failure. Do you think a crown will fix that twisted leg?" Elena felt Adrian move protectively beside her, but she lifted her hand, signaling that she could handle this herself. "You're right, Margaret. I still limp. I probably always will." Elena's voice grew stronger. "But I've learned something important since leaving your house." "What's that?" Rose asked mockingly. Elena smiled, a real, confident smile. "I've learned that my worth has nothing to do with how I walk, and everything to do with how I choose to live." She looked at each of them in turn. These people who had tormented her for years, who had made her believe she was worthless. "I've healed the sick, I've taught children to read, I've helped this land prosper through fair trade and honest dealing, I've earned respect through kindness and intelligence." Elena stepped closer, no longer the frightened girl they remembered. "You taught me that I was broken, but you were wrong. I was never broken. I was just waiting to find where I truly belonged." The royal messenger stepped forward. "Your Highness, we really must depart for the capital." Elena looked at Adrian with worried eyes. Will you come with me?" Adrian took her hand firmly. "Wherever you go, I go. We face this together." As they prepared to leave for court, Elena felt a mixture of fear and excitement. Her past was finally clear, her future was uncertain. But one thing she knew for sure, she was no longer afraid of who she was. The royal court buzzed with whispers when Elena arrived. She walked through the great throne room, her walking stick tapping against polished marble floors. Nobles turned to stare, some with curiosity, others with barely hidden contempt. "Is that really her?" she heard someone whisper. "The lost princess, but look how she walks. Such a shame, royal blood wasted on damaged goods." Elena felt the old familiar sting of judgment, but this time something was different. Adrian walked beside her, proud and unwavering, and more importantly, she knew her own worth now. King Robert sat upon his golden throne, an elderly man with kind eyes that reminded Elena of someone, herself perhaps. "Princess Elena," he said warmly, rising to greet her. "My dear niece, you have your mother's eyes." Elena curtsied carefully, managing not to stumble. "Your Majesty, I'm honored to meet my true family at last." The king stepped down from his throne and embraced her gently. "The honor is mine, child. I've searched for you for 20 years. But not everyone in the court was pleased by Elena's return. Duke Harrison, a cruel-faced man with calculating eyes, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, surely we must consider the princess's condition." "What condition?" the king asked sharply. "Her injury, her inability to perform royal duties as expected. Perhaps it would be kinder to let her remain in her simple country life." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. Here it was again, the same old song. She wasn't good enough, not perfect enough, not whole enough. But then Elena remembered Sarah, the miller's daughter, thanking her for saving her grandmother's life. She remembered the village children reading their first words under her patient teaching. She remembered Adrian's eyes when he told her she was extraordinary. Elena stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "Duke Harrison raises an interesting point," she said calmly. "He questions whether I can perform royal duties." The Duke smirked, thinking he had won. Elena continued, "Perhaps we should examine what royal duties truly are." She moved to the center of the room, all eyes upon her. "Is it royal to heal the sick? Because I have saved dozens of lives with these hands." She held up her hands confidently. "Is it royal to educate the common people? Because I have taught an entire village to read and write." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "Is it royal to increase prosperity through wisdom and fair dealing? Because I have improved trade relations and increased revenue by 30%. Gasps echoed through the room. These were impressive accomplishments for anyone, let alone a woman they had dismissed as worthless. Elena looked directly at Duke Harrison. "You judge me by my limp, but a true ruler is measured by their service to their people, not by how gracefully they can dance at court." She turned to address the entire assembly. "I may walk differently than you expect, but I think clearly, I act with compassion, I lead with wisdom. These are the qualities that matter in a ruler." King Robert beamed with pride, spoken like a true princess, like true royalty. But Elena wasn't finished. She looked back at her adoptive family, who stood in the corner with sour expressions. "Lady Catherine, Lord Charles, you taught me that I was worthless because of my injury. You made me believe that my value as a person depended on having a perfect body." Elena's voice carried across the silent room. "But you were wrong, completely, utterly wrong. My worth comes from my actions, my character, my heart, and by those measures," Elena smiled confidently, "I am priceless." The throne room erupted in applause. Nobles who had whispered cruel words moments before now clapped with genuine respect. Duke Harrison's face flushed red with embarrassment. Lady Catherine looked as though she had swallowed something bitter. King Robert approached Elena with tears in his eyes. "My dear, you are everything a princess should be, everything a ruler should be. I am proud to call you my heir." Elena felt tears of joy streaming down her face. But these were not tears of pain or shame. These were tears of triumph, of recognition, of finally truly coming home. Adrian stepped forward and took her hand. "I am so proud of you," he whispered. Elena squeezed his hand tightly. "We did this together," she whispered back. As the court continued to celebrate around them, Elena realized that her journey was complete. She had traveled from shame to strength, from hiding to shining, from broken bird to soaring eagle. She was Princess Elena, and she was exactly who she was meant to be. 3 months later, Elena's coronation day dawned bright and clear. She stood before the mirror in her royal chambers, wearing a gown of deep blue silk. The crown jewels sparkled on the dressing table beside her, but Elena's attention was drawn to something else entirely. Her walking stick, carved from dark oak, worn smooth by years of use. Some had suggested she try to hide it during the ceremony, use props or supports that would be less noticeable. Elena picked it up and ran her fingers over the familiar wood. This stick had supported her through her darkest days. It had been with her when she took her first confident steps in Westmore, when she walked through villages healing the sick, when she stood up to Duke Harrison and reclaimed her worth. "My lady." Martha appeared in the doorway. "It's time." Elena nodded, lifting her chin with determination. "I'm ready." The cathedral was packed with nobles, commoners, and dignitaries from neighboring kingdoms. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting rainbow patterns on the floor. Elena walked down the aisle with grace and purpose. Her walking stick tapped a steady rhythm against the stone floor. But now, instead of shame, it beat out a song of triumph. She saw Adrian in the front row, wearing his finest clothes, but still with that gentle smile that had won her heart. She saw the people of Westmore, the baker's wife, the miller's daughter, the children she had taught to read. But she also saw her adoptive family in the back, their faces sour with resentment. Duke Harrison sat with arms crossed, clearly bitter about recent events. When Elena reached the altar, King Robert stood to address the assembly. "People of the realm," his voice rang out strong and clear. "Today we crown not just a princess but a true leader, someone who has proven that nobility comes not from perfect appearance, but from perfect heart." Elena knelt carefully, her walking stick resting beside her. The ancient crown was placed upon her head, heavy with jewels and history, but somehow it felt right. "Rise, Princess Elena, rightful heir to the throne." Elena stood slowly, gracefully. The crowd erupted in cheers. But then Duke Harrison stood up, his face twisted with anger. "This is absurd," he shouted over the celebration. "A crippled woman cannot rule. She will make us a laughingstock among other nations." The crowd fell silent. Elena felt that old familiar chill of judgment. But this time, something unexpected happened. The baker's wife stood up in the commoners' section. "Princess Elena saved my husband's life when the fever took him." The miller called out, "She taught my daughter to read. Now my girl can run our business." One by one, the common people began to stand, sharing stories of Elena's kindness, her wisdom, her healing touch. "She's more royal than any of you fancy lords," shouted an elderly farmer. Even some of the nobles began to nod in agreement. They had witnessed Elena's intelligence during court sessions, her fair handling of disputes, her innovative solutions to old problems. Elena looked at Duke Harrison with calm, steady eyes. "You're right about one thing, Duke Harrison. I am different from other rulers. I don't rule from a throne room, removed from my people's lives. I rule from among them, with them." She gestured to the crowd with her free hand, her walking stick steady in the other. "These people don't need a ruler who can dance perfectly at balls. They need someone who understands their struggles, someone who has faced adversity and learned to overcome it." Elena's voice grew stronger, more confident. "I may walk with a stick, but I stand on unshakable ground, the ground of earned respect, of proven service, of love freely given and freely returned." She looked directly at Lady Catherine, her adoptive mother, who sat pale and silent. "You taught me to be ashamed of my differences, but my differences are what make me strong, what make me wise, what make me, me." The crowd erupted in the loudest cheer yet. Even hardened nobles found themselves clapping with genuine enthusiasm. Duke Harrison sank back into his seat, defeated. Lady Catherine and her family looked around nervously as other nobles distanced themselves from their obvious cruelty. King Robert placed his hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "Princess Elena speaks truth. She has already proven herself a leader beyond measure." Elena smiled, feeling the weight of the crown, but also the lightness of complete acceptance. She had fought for this moment, earned it through years of pain, growth and service. As the ceremony concluded and people began to file out, Adrian approached the altar. "Your Highness," he said with a playful bow. "My lord," Elena replied with equally playful formality. Then they both laughed, and Adrian took her hand. "How does it feel to be royalty?" he asked. Elena considered this, looking around the cathedral that was now hers, at the people who had chosen to follow her, at the man who had loved her before anyone knew she was a princess. "It feels like coming home," she said simply. And for the first time in her life, Elena felt completely, perfectly, beautifully whole. 5 years later, Elena stood on the balcony of her royal castle, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Her walking stick rested against the stone railing, but she no longer needed to lean on it constantly, not because her limp had disappeared, but because her confidence had grown so strong that it supported her more than any stick ever could. "Good morning, Your Majesty." Elena turned to see Adrian approaching with a steaming cup of tea, and their 3-year-old daughter Rose toddling beside him on chubby legs. "Mama," Rose squealed, running to wrap her arms around Elena's legs. Elena scooped up her daughter, marveling as always at this perfect little person. Rose had Adrian's dark eyes and Elena's curious mind, and thankfully no sign of her mother's limp, though Elena would love her just as fiercely if she had. "How are the morning reports?" Adrian asked, settling beside them on the balcony. "Excellent. The new trade route through Sage Valley has increased our prosperity by 50%. The healing centers in every village are reducing illness dramatically, and Elaine smiled proudly. Our literacy rate is now the highest in all neighboring kingdoms." Adrian kissed her temple gently. "I'm so proud of you, though I can't say I'm surprised." Below them, the castle courtyard buzzed with activity. Elena had transformed the royal residence into something unprecedented, a working palace where nobles and commoners mingled freely. Children attended school in the East Wing, healers trained in the medical quarters. The Great Hall hosted trade negotiations alongside royal ceremonies. "Mama, tell story," Rose demanded, settling into Elena's lap. "Which story, sweetheart?" "About the princess who was sad but then became happy." Elena exchanged a amused look with Adrian. Their daughter's favorite bedtime story was a simplified version of Elena's own journey. "Once upon a time," Elena began, "there was a princess who thought she was broken because she walked differently than others." As she told the familiar tale, Elena's mind wandered to all the changes of recent years. Lady Catherine and her daughters had faded into obscurity, their cruelty finally recognized for what it was. Duke Harrison had been stripped of his lands for attempting to undermine the crown. But Elena had chosen mercy over revenge. She'd given them small pensions and quiet lives away from court, not because they deserved her kindness, but because she had learned that forgiveness freed her own heart. Her healing centers had saved thousands of lives. Her educational programs had lifted entire families out of poverty. Her fair trade policies had brought prosperity to all levels of society. But perhaps most importantly, Elena had become a symbol, a beacon for anyone who had ever been told they weren't good enough, weren't perfect enough, weren't whole enough. Letters arrived weekly from young women across the kingdom and beyond, girls who had been rejected for their appearance, their abilities, their circumstances. Princess Elena, one recent letter had read, "I was born with one arm shorter than the other. My family said no one would ever want me, but after hearing your story, I've started my own bakery. And guess what? People don't care about my arm, they just love my bread." These letters filled Elena's heart more than any crown jewel ever could. And the princess learned that being different wasn't a curse. Elena continued Rose's favorite story. It was a gift, because her differences helped her understand other people who were hurting. "And she lived happily ever after?" Rose asked, even though she knew the ending. "She lived meaningfully ever after," Elena corrected gently, "which is even better than just being happy." Rose nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense. That afternoon, Elena held court in the great hall. As always, she listened to disputes with patience and wisdom. A merchant claimed another had cheated him. A farmer needed help with a neighbor's boundary dispute. A young woman sought advice about an abusive husband. Elena handled each case with careful thought and compassion. Her walking stick rested beside her throne, but she no longer thought of it as a sign of weakness. It was simply part of who she was, like her brown hair, or her love of maps, or her gift for healing. After court, Elena walked through the village streets with Rose in her arms and Adrian by her side. People waved and called out greetings, not because protocol demanded it, but because they genuinely loved their princess. "Lady Elena," called out Thomas the blacksmith, "my boy Marcus just finished reading his first book, thanks to your schools." "Princess Elena," shouted Sarah, now grown and married with children of her own, "will you bless our new baby next week?" Elena waved and smiled, her heart full to bursting. That evening, as she tucked Rose into bed, her daughter asked a new question. "Mama, why do you have that stick?" Elena sat on the edge of the small bed, considering how to answer. "Well, sweetheart, when I was little, I hurt my leg very badly. It never healed quite right, so sometimes I need help walking." Rose nodded seriously. "Does it make you sad?" Elena thought about this honestly. "Sometimes it used to make me sad, because some people said mean things about it, but then I learned something important." "What?" "I learned that the stick doesn't make me weak. It makes me remember to be kind to other people who are struggling, and that's actually a very good thing to remember." Rose smiled and hugged her mother tight. "I think your stick is nice." "I do too, sweetheart. I do too." Later that night, Elena and Adrian sat in their private chambers, working by candlelight. Elena was reviewing plans for new hospitals. Adrian was reading reports from their expanded trade network. "Do you ever wonder," Adrian said quietly, "what would have happened if we hadn't found each other?" Elena looked up from her papers. "You mean if I'd stayed hidden away as the damaged daughter? If you'd married someone else?" Elena considered this. I think we both would have survived, but we never would have truly lived." Adrian reached across the space between their chairs to take her hand. "I love the life we've built together," he said. "Not just the crown and the castle, but this, the meaningful work, the family we've created, the way we've learned to see beauty in imperfect things." Elena squeezed his hand. "Including imperfect people?" "Especially imperfect people. Perfect people are boring." Adrian grinned. "They have no interesting stories to tell." Elena laughed, the sound bright and free. As they prepared for bed, Elena caught sight of herself in the mirror. The same face that had once caused her such shame now looked back with confidence and peace. Her leg would always be weak. Her walk would always be different, but she had learned the most important truth of all. She was not broken. She had never been broken. She was beautifully, perfectly, exactly who she was meant to be. And she lived meaningfully and joyfully ever after.